My name is Margaret Johnson, and I am 75 years old. Some call me Grandma Maggie, others simply Grandma. I have lived long enough to see wars end, cities grow, and children I once rocked in my arms now become parents themselves. But no matter how much the world changes, one thing never changes for me: family. Now, dear listener, before I tell you this story, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from tonight? Are you sitting on your couch with a warm blanket, maybe sipping hot cocoa? Or perhaps you are in bed with the lights low, curious about what a grandmother like me could possibly have to say. Wherever you are, I want you to lean in close, because what I am about to share with you is no ordinary story. It is about love, kindness, heartbreak, and the kind of shock that can leave an old woman speechless on the very night she thought would bring her the most joy. I came to surprise my family on Christmas Eve. What they did shocked me. Yes, that is the truth. A shock so sharp it made me stop at the doorway, holding my breath, wondering if my heart could bear what my eyes were seeing. At first, I thought I had stepped into the wrong house. The laughter, the shining lights, the cheerful voices, they were all familiar, yet what I witnessed that night felt like a stranger's life playing before me. I must not run too quickly, though. You see, surprises can be sweet, but sometimes they are like bitter medicine. You don't know how it will taste until you swallow it. And that night, the surprise I carried turned into something I never expected. But I will not tell you everything at once, no. Where would the fun be in that? Let me take you back step by step, so you can walk beside me through the snow. Hear the crunch of my boots. Feel the excitement that made my old hands tremble as I carried gifts for the little ones, and sense the heaviness that settled in my chest when the door finally opened. I was born in 1949 in a small town in Georgia, but I raised my family in Ohio. Life has not always been easy. I lost my husband, Robert, 20 years ago. He was the love of my life, my partner, my anchor. When he died, I felt like half of me had been buried along with him. But I carried on, as widows do, because of my children. My son, Daniel, and my daughter, Susan, became my reason to keep going. They gave me grandchildren who filled my empty rooms with laughter again. Over the years, I became the kind of grandmother who baked cookies every Saturday, sent birthday cards even when nobody else remembered, and sat through every school play. And the morning of Christmas Eve began in my little house, quiet as always. The snow had fallen all night, and when I opened the curtains, the world outside looked like it had been dipped in sugar. Everything sparkled. I told myself it was a sign. This was going to be a beautiful day. I put on my red sweater, the one Robert had once told me brought out the shine in my eyes, and I tied my scarf neatly, even though my fingers shook in the cold. Packing wasn't easy at my age. My knees protested each time I bent to fold clothes, and I had to sit down often to catch my breath. Still, I smiled as I tucked in the presents. Each gift was chosen with care. Books for Emma, a toy train for Jacob, a soft doll for Grace, and scarves I had knitted for the adults. Every stitch of those scarves carried prayers for their happiness. The bus station was crowded, full of people with luggage, children tugging on coats, and holiday music playing faintly through broken speakers. I sat with my suitcase, feeling both nervous and thrilled. A kind young man helped me lift my bag onto the bus. "Thank you, son," I told him. He smiled and said, "Merry Christmas, ma'am." Those small kindnesses, they mean the world when you're old. The ride was long. I watched fields roll by, then towns with lights glowing in every window. Families were out shopping, couples walked hand in hand, and children skipped along, their faces pressed against toy store windows. I thought of my own childhood Christmases. We never had much, but Mama always made sure there was laughter in our home. We sang carols, baked cornbread, and shared whatever little we had. Kindness, Mama always said, was the best gift of all. Hours passed, and at last the bus pulled into the city where my family lived. I stepped off, my bones stiff from sitting so long, but my spirits soaring. I hailed a cab and gave the driver the address. "Going to see family, ma'am?" he asked. "Yes," I said with a grin. "They don't know I'm coming." He chuckled. Best kind of surprise. By the time I reached their neighborhood, I opened my mouth to call out, ready to say, "Merry Christmas," in the loudest, happiest voice I could manage. But before a single word left my lips, my ears caught something that made me freeze. Daniel's voice rang out above the laughter. "Well, at least we don't have to deal with Mom this year. Can you imagine? She'd probably be fussing about how much money I spent on decorations or telling us stories we've already heard 100 times." The room erupted with chuckles. Even Susan, my sweet daughter who once cried whenever she had to leave me at kindergarten, gave a little laugh. The world tilted. My knees wobbled, and I had to grip the suitcase tighter so it wouldn't slip from my hand. My heart thumped so loud in my chest I thought someone would hear it and turn around. But no. No one noticed me standing there, just a shadow in the doorway. I wanted to tell myself I had misheard, that maybe Daniel was joking. But then Linda, my daughter-in-law, spoke with her sharp tongue. Oh goodness, she'd probably bring half her knitting projects and expect us all to wear those itchy scarves. No offense, but I'm glad she stayed put this year. Itchy scarves. Those scarves were made with love, each loop of yarn stitched with prayer. I had packed them carefully in my suitcase, one for each of them, believing they would feel my warmth in every fiber. Now, hearing those words, I felt as though someone had set a torch to all my effort and care. I couldn't breathe. My chest ached. I wanted to turn and leave right then, to step back into the snow and disappear into the night. But something stronger held me in place. A mix of pain, disbelief, and the faint hope that maybe someone, just one of them, would speak up for me. That's when little Emma's voice piped up. "Sweet honest Emma," she said, "but I like Grandma's stories. And her scarves are warm. Remember last winter when I wore mine, and it kept me from getting cold?" For a second my heart lifted. My little angel. But before I could cling to that hope, Susan's husband, Mark, shook his head and muttered, "Emma, you only say that because you're young. She's old, and old people never know when to stop talking." The silence felt like it lasted an eternity. My breath came in shallow gasps, and the weight of the suitcase pulled on my aching shoulder. Emma's fork slipped from her little hand and clattered onto her plate. Her eyes grew wide, and for the first time that evening, I saw a face that wasn't ashamed to see me. It was her small, bright face, filled with shock but also something softer, something close to love. "Grandma," she whispered. Her voice pierced through the heavy air like a candle in darkness. My lips trembled, but I forced myself to smile. "Merry Christmas," I said, though my voice cracked in the middle. "Surprise." No one moved. Daniel's jaw clenched. His wife, Linda, looked down at her plate, cheeks red. Jacob's question struck the room like thunder. His little voice, innocent yet piercing, cut through the silence in a way that none of the adults dared. "Why don't you want Grandma here?" he repeated, his brown eyes bouncing from face to face, waiting for an answer. The adults shifted uncomfortably. Daniel coughed. Susan stared down at her lap, and Linda frowned as though she wished the boy hadn't spoken at all. Mark sighed heavily, muttering something under his breath. But children have a way of seeing truth more clearly than grown-ups, and Jacob wasn't about to let it go. "Grandma came all this way," he pressed, his voice growing braver. "She brought presents. You didn't even say thank you." Emma looked at him with wide eyes, then gave me a tiny nod of support. Even little Grace, who barely understood the weight of the moment, whispered, "I want Grandma here." Their words washed over me like a fragile balm on a wound, but before I could gather strength from them, Daniel slammed his palm down on the table. The sound made me jump. "That's enough," he barked. His voice was sharp, commanding, and full of frustration. The children fell silent instantly, shrinking into their chairs. I stared at my son, my Danny, my boy who once held my hand crossing streets, who cried when his shoelaces came undone, who used to slip into my bed when the thunder scared him. Now his face was stone, hard and cold. "Mom," he said firmly, "you should have called first. We made plans tonight. You just showing up, it's not fair to us." Not fair to them. The words burned into me. I wanted to shout, "What about me? What about all the Christmases I sat alone, wishing for just one call, one visit, one sign you had?" The room quivered with silence after my words. The only sound was the faint crackle of the fireplace and the carols still humming faintly from the stereo. Silent night, though nothing about that moment felt silent or holy. Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. His jaw twitched. He glanced at Linda, then at Susan, as though hoping someone else would speak first. But no one did. I stood straighter, my hand still clutching the handle of the suitcase I had dropped. "Answer me," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Is a mother not welcome in her son's home at Christmas?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Mom, it's not about welcome. It's about boundaries. We didn't plan for this." Boundaries. That word hung in the air like frost. My son, the boy I had stayed up with during fevers, the boy I had worked 2 jobs to feed, the boy who once told me I was his hero, was now telling me my presence in his home was a problem of boundaries. Susan finally stepped forward, her face pale, her voice soft. "Mom, please, let's not fight. The kids are watching." I looked at her, my daughter, the one I once braided hair for every morning before school, the one I walked to class when she was afraid of bullies. "Susan," I whispered, "do you feel the same? That I don't belong here?" Her lips parted, but she hesitated. She couldn't say no. She couldn't say yes. She lowered her eyes, and that silence told me more than any words could. The less extreme moment came when Emma, brave little Emma, tugged at my sweater again. "Grandma," she said fiercely. My hands trembled, but my voice grew steady, fueled by a lifetime of swallowed words. "Stay home," I repeated, my eyes locked on Daniel's. "All those nights I worked double shifts so you'd never go hungry. All those Christmas mornings I went without so you and Susan could have presents under the tree. And you stand there in front of your children and tell me I should have stayed home?" Daniel's face reddened. "Mom, that's not fair." "Not fair," I snapped, my voice echoing louder than the carols still whispering through the speakers. "What's not fair is giving everything you have, your body, your heart, your soul, and being told you're a burden when you're old. That is not fair." The children sat frozen. Emma's eyes brimmed with tears. Jacob clutched his chair. Even little Grace hiccuped in her crying. Susan whispered, "Mom, please." But I raised a hand. "No, Susan. Tonight I speak." The less extreme moment came when silence returned. Heavy but different now. Less cold, more shaken. I could see guilt flicker across Susan's face. Even Linda shifted uneasily, her sharp edges softening just a little. But Daniel's pride was a wall. "Mom, this isn't about the past. This is about now. Things change. People move on." And that was when the storm inside me erupted. "Then shame on you, Daniel Johnson," thundered. "Shame on you for forgetting where you came from. For teaching your children that love expires when it's inconvenient. If your father were alive, he would weep to see what you've become." The room went still, the words hanging like lightning after a strike. Daniel's face hardened, but Susan stepped forward, tears finally sliding down her cheeks. "Mom, she's right." Daniel turned sharply. "What?" Susan's voice cracked. "She's right. We've let her sit alone too many holidays. We've made excuses. And it's wrong." She turned to me, her eyes glistening. "Mom, I'm sorry." The less extreme moment came as she wrapped her arms around me. Her embrace soft, familiar, and long overdue. I clutched her tightly, my tears soaking into her sweater. For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of us, mother and daughter, mending what years of silence had broken. But Daniel stood stiff, his fists clenched. "So now I'm the villain," he barked. Linda reached for his arm, whispering, "Danny," but he pulled away. And then, the next extreme moment, Daniel slammed his fist against the wall. The children jumped in fright. "You don't understand," he shouted. "You don't know the pressure I'm under. Work, bills, expectations. I can't carry everything, and I won't let anyone make me feel guilty for setting limits. Not even Mom." The crack of his fist against the wall echoed long after his words. The air hung heavy with Daniel's outburst. My heart pounded, but instead of shrinking I stepped closer. My voice softened. "Danny, my sweet boy, I never wanted to add to your burdens. All I ever wanted was to share them with you." His eyes flickered, conflict beneath the anger. The less extreme moment came when Emma, with all the courage of a 10-year-old, climbed down from her chair, walked up to her father and tugged his sleeve. "Daddy," she said quietly, "you always tell us Christmas is about family. How can it be family if Grandma isn't here?" Daniel looked at his daughter, his hardened face softening for just a breath. The wall of pride trembled. But then Jacob added louder, "If Grandma leaves, I'm leaving with her." That set the room on fire. Linda gasped. Susan tried to calm him, and Grace burst into fresh tears. The children had thrown down a challenge their father could not ignore. The extreme moment came when Daniel spun around and barked, "Enough! This is my house, and I decide what happens here." His voice was so sharp, so final, that the children recoiled, their little bodies shaking with fear. And in that instant, the battle lines were drawn, not between me and my son, but between love and pride. The room was breaking apart. I saw it in Susan's trembling hands, in Linda's pale face, in the children's wide eyes. My heart ached, but I knew then what I had to do. I straightened my back, my voice calm but strong. "Daniel, you are right about one thing. This is your house. And because it is your house, I will leave." The children cried out, "No, Grandma." Emma clung to me, Jacob grabbed my suitcase, Grace wrapped her tiny arms around my leg. The less extreme moment came as I bent down, holding them close, whispering, "My darlings, remember this night. Remember that love is never a burden, and kindness is never wasted. Carry that with you always." But as I stood, suitcase in hand, I looked back at my son, my boy, and I said the words that would either break him forever or set him free. "Danny, if you send me away tonight, you will teach your children that pride is more important than love. And I promise you this, one day when they are grown and you are old, you will feel the same loneliness you gave me." The extreme moment fell heavy in the air. Daniel's face crumpled, the anger draining, replaced by something raw. Fear, regret, pain. "Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking for the first time that night. The silence that followed was different now. Not icy, not sharp, but heavy with truth. Daniel's shoulders sagged, his eyes wet. Slowly he stepped forward. His hand trembled as he reached out. Not commanding, not dismissing, but pleading. "Don't go," he whispered. The children gasped in relief. Emma smiled through her tears. Susan covered her mouth, sobbing softly. I set the suitcase down, my hands shaking. Daniel wrapped his arms around me, and for the first time in decades, I felt my son hold me not out of obligation, but out of need. He wept into my shoulder, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." The less extreme moment unfolded as Susan joined the embrace. Then the children piled in, their little arms wrapping us all together. Even Linda, her eyes glistening with shame, whispered, "I was wrong, Margaret. You do belong here." The house, once filled with cold silence, now overflowed with warmth. The fire crackled brighter, the tree lights sparkled as though they too had been waiting for this moment, and the carol on the stereo carried the words, "All is calm, all is bright." And in that circle of arms, broken hearts began to mend. The extreme conclusion was not anger, not rejection, but reconciliation. The shock of rejection had turned into the miracle of forgiveness. I came to surprise my family on Christmas Eve, and what they did shocked me. But in the end, that shock gave birth to something greater than I ever expected. Truth, healing, and a love that, though cracked and bruised, could still find its way back home. Christmas, after all, is not about perfect trees or perfect plans. It is about imperfect people finding their way to one another again. And that night, in my 75th year, I received the greatest gift of all. My family returned to me.